Okay, so good afternoon. I'm Charla Robinson, president of the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce, and I'm pleased to welcome you to attend today. We start by acknowledging that the city of Thunder Bay is built on the traditional lands of the Ojibwa peoples of the Fort William First Nation, original signatories to the Robinson Superior Treaty signed in 1850. And we recognize the significant contributions of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples to our heritage, social, cultural, spiritual, and economic wealth. One of the challenges we're hearing from local employers is a difficulty in finding the workers they need. So that's why we've invited Lisa Kelly from the Discoverability program at the Ontario Chamber of Commerce to provide an overview of the ways that this initiative can help employers to find job seekers that they may not have connected with previously. So thanks for being here today, Lisa. I'll pass the mic over to you.
Great, and I'm actually joined today by my colleague, Donald Gusesala, and I'll have Donald introduce himself here in a moment. Thank you so much for inviting us. We're delighted to be here with the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. So we are both Donald and I work with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, not-for-profit network of local chambers and boards of trade across the province, representing about 60,000 businesses. And this program that I'm going to talk about today, Discoverability Network, was created to help you address labor market gaps. My background is as a person with lived experience of disability. I have helped as an employment counselor people with disabilities transition back into the workplace, and I have helped businesses, hire, recruit, support people with disabilities in the workplace. Donald, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll be brief. My name is Donald Gusesala. I have the pleasure of working with Lisa, and my role in the Discoverability Network is as a program manager responsible primarily for stakeholder relations with community partners, strategic partnership development, and our networking event strategy. So we look forward to hopefully adding some of you to our partnership list and seeing you at some of our events. Absolutely.
Thank you, Donald. I'm really going to talk to you about the Discoverability Network. So let's just start with what it is, because you're probably all that's top of mind when you're thinking about this. The program has three primary elements. The first is a job matching platform that connects you as a business to qualified job seekers with a disability to meet your business and workforce needs. It's free of charge. We work across the province, and it's based on matching you and what you need to skilled and qualified workers. The second thing is we offer free training. So sometimes it's not enough to just connect with someone and decide you want to hire. You may need to know more about how to do that. You may wonder about what the AODA is asking you to comply with. You may have questions about disclosure or accommodations. So we offer free training to businesses that engage with us through the system, again, that connects you. And finally, networking events that connect you to our job seekers. And we also have a website that offers you tools and a roadmap to hiring people with disabilities. It's all at www.discoverability.network. So now I'm going to take a step back. I've told you what it is. I'm going to show you some pictures of that in a moment. But we'll start with why this should be of concern to you. And I think it's an interesting story because we have about 1 in 5 Canadians, or about 6.2 million people in Canada, who self-identify as having a disability. That's an incredibly large number. That's 1 in 5 of the population. Now, things come to mind when we think of disability. So I want to dispel some of those myths. The number one disability or disability group in Canada is people who experience pain, flexibility, or mobility issues. And that comprises about 29% of people who self-identify on the Stats Can survey from 2017. Another large group is people who experience mental health conditions. And definitely during COVID, we've seen those numbers rise. So we know that in any given year, about 1 in 5 Canadians will experience a diagnosable medical health episode or condition. Another thing that most people don't think about is only 29% of disabilities are visible. About 71 are invisible or non-apparent. That means you might already be hiring somebody who has a disability and maybe doesn't have the supports or accommodations needed to be really great at the job. So that's also part of this program, is to help you help your employees be their best in the workplace. This is a fast-growing and large diversity group. Now, I said there were 6.2 million Canadians 15 years or older, 22% of the population, and about 2 in 5 of those are job-ready Canadians. When we look at the disability market, that's the term I'm going to use for this, so that's people who have a disability or have a close friend or family member with a disability, it's 53%. So if you're not being inclusive across your service delivery, your customer service, your workplace, your employment practices, how you communicate, you may be missing a really large group of individuals who are affected and thinking about disability and often make decisions, purchase decisions, the decision to work with your company based on the fact that they have someone in their life who either has or is experiencing a disability. There's lots of different types of disabilities. All right, I've got a few of them up on the screen if you're able to see that. So there may be people with progressive illnesses, physical disabilities, neurological disabilities. Sometimes people refer to state that they have a condition. That's fine too. Acquired disabilities. So most people acquire their disability after the age of 45. So we need to be thinking about our aging workforce as we run our businesses. Disability is affected by time. So disabilities can be permanent, episodic, meaning they come and go in waves, or even temporary. Disability is affected by scale, meaning a disability can be mild, moderate, or severe. And disability is affected by context, meaning that in some places, a person may not consider them to have a disability, but in others, they might. So think about somebody who's able to work at home very effectively, but when they get into a noisy environment, it may be difficult for them to concentrate. And that disability is affected by the fact that we haven't offered quiet spaces or alternative ways to work. Hiring people with a disability is actually great for business. So in a Bank of Montreal survey, 2014, 77% of small businesses who've hired people with a disability said they met or exceeded expectation. I ran a small business for 25 years. That's a fantastic statistic because it's not just meet, it's meet or exceed. We know in general from a lot of different studies out there that there's higher profitability. One of those reasons is that people with disabilities have higher than average retention rates and company loyalty, which saves you money because you're not spending it recruiting and training or in lost opportunity costs. Speaking of that word costs, you can actually save money when you hire people with disabilities. For every dollar invested in an accommodation, you can earn an average rate of return of $28. And the reality is that most people with disabilities don't require an accommodation. And of those that do, 60% of those accommodations cost absolutely nothing. We know that if you're a small business, that can be challenging, capacity issues around human resources. So one of the things that we did was create this free job matching technology to connect you at no charge to candidates. We offer free training to support you in that journey of hiring. And we have an amazing website that connects you to speakers, toolkits, tools, and of course, our roadmap. There's additional benefits. So up to 72% higher staff retention, and actually working with persons with disabilities in a company lowers overall turnover up to 30%. 90% of employees with disabilities rate average or above average on job performance, and 86% of employees with disabilities rate average or better on attendance. Finally, this is usually a concern, I'm not sure why, but 98% of employees with disabilities rate average or better on safety. So if we summed up the value proposition, we're going to have someone who stays longer, who attends as well as or better than employees without disability, who is as or more productive than employees without disabilities, and finally, who will work as or more safely than people without disabilities. It's a great talent pool to draw from. So if you have to go away with a couple of takeaways, I'm going to give you 3. People with disabilities are an untapped talent pool with the skills and abilities to help your business grow and profit. And we can connect you to this talent pool at no charge. Now, there are barriers to hiring. So you might be thinking, if this is such a great group, did we create a system to connect them? Well, we know that people with disabilities are employed at a much lower rate than people without disabilities. And the number one barrier to that is attitudinal. So there's misconceptions about the competency and productivity of employees with disabilities. So part of my job, part of Donald's job, is to go out and tell people, correct those misperceptions. There's also misconceptions about the costs. Most people assume that accommodations are going to be very costly. But like I said before, 93% of accommodations are a one-time cost of less than $500. And when you look at the cost of hiring somebody, training them, that's probably for a very simple job around $4,000. This is actually a really cost-effective strategy. And finally, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, through the Discoverability Network, is here to provide you with hiring help, training, retention, and promotional help. Now, because we are also required by law, I'm going to mention this, under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act, to actually make our businesses inclusive. I think this is an important message. Obviously, I think that the benefits to the business is a stronger case for hiring people. But under the AODA, you are required to remove barriers in the workplace related to customer service, information and communications, employment, transportation, and public spaces. So these barriers happen all across these different areas. And the number one barrier is probably attitudinal. So I spend a lot of my time talking about the business case, how people with disabilities can make great employees, but also information and communications. So are we providing large format print? Is our website accessible? Technology, what kind of tools might we need to provide to somebody who communicates in a different way? Organizational policies, are we inadvertently biasing our hiring process so that it excludes people with disabilities? And finally, the physical workplace. Do we have wide aisles? Do we have an accessible washroom? Do we have flexibility, like I mentioned earlier about the noise? So maybe we need to give somebody a noise canceling headset if we're in an open concept space. I like to encourage the businesses that we work with to think of disability as simply a mismatched interaction. So stop thinking of it as a physical quality or feature of a person's body, and start thinking about the fact that we've unintentionally created environments that don't work for everyone. The reason we do that mismatched interaction between the features of a person's body and the features of the environment in which they work, is we can actually solve mismatched interactions. We can't solve someone's personal health condition, so we don't really need to know about that. We're probably not a medical professional. So, it's not a productive definition, the medical definition of disability. We solve those mismatched interactions by providing tools or changing things in the workplace to allow a person to do their job. And that's what's called an accommodation. And under the AODA and the Ontario Human Rights Code, we're required to do that. Why do we use this definition? Again, we cannot solve an employee's personal health condition. So we really don't need to know a diagnosis. We really don't need to know private details about that. We just need to know where mismatches exist so we can solve them. Accommodations, those changes that we make in the workplace, are not extra. They simply allow a person to do their job. So again, they can be changes to a number of different things: attitudes, processes, the workplace. The essential duties of the job still get done. You're always going to hire somebody for their ability to do the job. We're just asking you to consider that there may be people with a disability that can do the job just as well, if not better. Standards aren't lowered. Things may just be done in a different way. Some examples of mismatches. All right, so we're not looking at disability, we're looking at disability as a mismatch. So perhaps we have a deaf customer service agent. The mismatch is that they communicate differently than, you know, a traditional or a person who's not deaf. So accommodations might be providing captions, an ASL interpreter, or allowing them to work remotely and provide service, you know, through typing on the computer. We may have a job seeker with anxiety who's interviewing and needs to complete a timed assessment. So the mismatch is now the interview style. We're not actually hiring somebody for how well they complete the timed assessment. We should be hiring them for how well they can do the job. So we need to consider, do we need a timed assessment? Perhaps we could provide more time for someone to complete something, or even provide questions beforehand or interview details to alleviate some of the anxiety. Again, we're not hiring the person who interviews the best, we're hiring the candidate who can do the job in the best way. Finally, perhaps we currently have an employee with chronic back pain, and as the day progresses, they find it harder to concentrate. So that pain, the mismatch is how the workplace is set up. So we might provide an ergonomic assessment, a sit-stand desk, or frequent stretch breaks. So again, we need to really look at what does the job seeker or the employee need, and then address those with solutions. This bears repeating. Accommodations enhance productivity and allow someone to do their job. There's a positive return for every dollar invested in accommodations. Most businesses, over 50%, report costs of $100 to $500 for a workplace accommodation. And 37% of businesses report that there was no cost for accommodations. 25% of companies report saving between $20,000 and $100,000 because of the use of effective accommodations. Now, how do we know if somebody requires an accommodation? Well, that's what we call disability disclosure. And disclosure is when the person shares that they have a disability or health condition. So you automatically know they're entitled to that accommodation. They may also share the changes they need in the workplace to do the primary parts of a job, the accommodation that they require. Sometimes they may simply tell you about barriers that are affecting their ability to do the job, and you work together to come up with the changes that would allow them to do that. Disclosure is not sharing the diagnosis or details of a health condition. When can disclosure happen? Well, it's up to the individual whether they even want to disclose. They are not legally required to, unless it relates to health and safety or their ability to do the primary parts of the job. And they can choose to disclose before an interview, after an interview, when they are offered a contract, later on, at any point in the hiring process, at any point in their employment. What they disclose is that they have a disability or a health condition, and they do not need to provide a diagnosis or proof. An accommodation may be requested, so you need to ask only for job relevant information. And finally, how? We need to create safe spaces for people to disclose. Most people with a disability are unwilling to disclose any information because they fear negative consequences. So as an employer, we can create a safe space, telling people we want you to be able to succeed on the job the day you start. So we provide accommodations for people, and then assure them how you will keep this information confidential. There's so much value to disclosure. So even if you have current employees who haven't disclosed, you might be experiencing absenteeism or presenteeism in the workplace. People do their best work when they don't have to act or pretend, and when they can just be their authentic selves. Accommodations let a person do their job, or in some cases, let them do their job better. Being able to provide accommodation actually keeps you as an organization nimble. So think about working from home and how during COVID, we all switched on a dime, or a lot of us did, to be able to allow some people to work from home. Something that was an accommodation request in the past and is now fairly common and standard across most businesses. Finally, when we know what people need, it allows us to plan better and offer resources. So for instance, at the OCC, we're all provided with sit-stand desks, and we're all provided with noise canceling headsets because we work in an open concept area. That originally came from a request from a person with a disability, and it's now become standard across the organization because all of us work better with those changes to the workplace. So takeaway number 2, the most important thing you need to know about a person with a disability in the workplace is if and what they need changed or adjusted to do their job. And this is called an accommodation. You can connect to us at www.discoverability.network. You'd sign in as a business. I have a screenshot of our website up on the screen. When you enter our website, you can look for the upper right-hand yellow button on the upper right-hand corner of the page, which will allow you to sign up for free. You can contact us directly for support in how to create an account and post jobs. And there's also on our website links to resources, what we think are some of the best toolkits, training, and videos out there. And there is a business roadmap for everything you need to know about hiring people with disabilities in 6 easy steps. So takeaway number 3, we're here to support business to profit and grow by connecting to qualified talent at no charge. We very much hope you'll all join today.